Okay. I'm not actually going to do that for the whole 18 minutes. Mimes actually can talk, and I'd like to use my time today to share my story with you about how I got into mime and how mime changed my life. But I wanted to start my TED Talk with a little awkward silence, because I think that's how we tend to view silence these days. Silence is something that's awkward and uncomfortable, like this dead air that needs to be filled with chit-chat, small talk, music, noise, something, as long as it's just not silent. Awkward silence is also a good way to describe how I was as an adolescent during my early and mid-teens, that wonderful time of our lives when puberty kicks in and gives us all those wonderful physical and life changes. And puberty was really not that kind to me. Puberty gave me all kinds of things like long gangly arms that were disproportionately long to the rest of my body, a concave sunken chest and shoulders that would slouch forward, pigeon knees, flat feet. This was pretty much me in middle school and high school. Well, all right. This was a bit more like it, walking from class to class, because I had no control over any part of my body. All of these limbs, all of the parts of me seemed to have a mind of their own. They all seemed dead set on making my life as awkward and embarrassing as possible. Kind of felt like a living Warner Brothers cartoon as I would try to walk from class to class and have any kind of coordination. So physically, I was just a mess with how to deal with all of this stuff. But socially and emotionally, I was awkward too, and really had trouble communicating and expressing myself. And not just because of the hormone levels, and every time I would open my mouth, I would tend to sound a little bit like this. It was also because I had a lot of stuff going on inside of myself. I had a lot of emotions and things that I was afraid to share with the outside world, and I learned how to use silence to act as a blanket to hide and disguise all these emotions I was feeling inside, emotions like guilt and shame and pain, because I had an experience when I was 11 years old. My father, after a long battle with mental illness, overdosed on sleeping pills and died. And this was devastating for me, especially as I was taking those first few important steps into manhood. I lost my example and I lost my guidance, and had this experience that I didn't really hear anybody else going through. And it wasn't the kind of thing that my family would really talk about. It's not the kind of thing that you advertise at parties and family gatherings, hey, this happened to me. So I had all of these emotions inside of me mixed up, and I would just keep on stuffing them inside and become less and less communicative and hide more and more in silence. Plus, a few years later, my mom remarried, and we moved from one state to a different state. I had to start a new school. I had to try to make new friends, and it was super difficult because like I said, I couldn't express myself. I was afraid to come out of my shell and actually make a connection. I was isolated socially, I was isolated emotionally, I was isolated physically, spending most of my time alone in my bedroom with my nose buried in comic books. I got really into comic books at the time, especially X-Men, because the X-Men, I don't know if you guys know the X-Men, band of mutants. And mutant was a good way to describe how I felt at the time as a gangly, awkward teenager. But the mutants I was reading about, with all of their physical abnormalities, blue skin, fur, wings, tails, they also had along with that something that made them extraordinary, something that gave them a superpower, something that they could use to achieve extraordinary feats and change the world and do something powerful. And I didn't have a superpower. I was just that funny-looking kid that didn't talk to anybody. But like happens in the comic book sometimes, the protagonist is exposed to something that's a catalyst that gives them their superpowers. Sometimes it's a radioactive spider bite. Sometimes it's a nuclear explosion that gives them their superpowers, lasers shooting out of their eyeballs. And when I was 15, I was exposed to something too that drastically changed my life. I was exposed to mime, which seems like it's kind of a strange thing to be exposed to, but it's true. I was exposed to mime thanks to extraordinary and enthusiastic mime artists that came to my school to work with the students for just a couple of weeks. And in that short amount of time, they shared their passion and their love for the art of mime with us and introduced me to this idea that there was strength in silence and that there's power in stillness. And they opened my mind to the idea that so much can be communicated through movement rather than words. And it was the first time that I really started to view silence as something liberating. I didn't have to talk or try to express myself through words or use my crackly voice. If I could just tame this beast of a body that was antagonizing me during my adolescent years and start to examine all the individual parts and how they move and how they fit together, and examine all the individual ways that they can do things, I could start to express myself. I could even, if I wanted to, move gracefully. Or I could also accept the fact that I am a little cartoon-like and just learn to accept that and enjoy it. Because I started to realize I could make people laugh, and that was really empowering. And it started to give me confidence enough to come out of my bedroom and stand in front of groups of people and try to share a little bit of myself with them. And that's what started me on this adventure that I'm still on to this day, of training and exploring and developing and learning how to express myself. I took more and more workshops in mime and got introduced to an entire global community of people that shared the same passion. Became like a surrogate family to me. I found a bunch of positive male role models to help fill that gap that I had in my heart after the loss of my father. I even met my wife, who's a pantomime actress here from Wrocław, who at the time that we met barely spoke any English and my Polish was non-existent. So we were able to form our bond first just through our common passion and something that we love to do through mime, but also using those tools to be able to communicate with each other without words and to develop a bond and a love that today I'm proud to say is beyond words. Mime was able to do all this for me and help me evolve into a whole, complete person, but it didn't start to feel like a superpower until I left the stage and the theater and started working in hospitals. In 2004, I joined an organization in Chicago called the Big Apple Circus Clown Care Unit, which takes artists from all over the city, musicians, mimes, clowns, jugglers, dancers, and sends them into the hospital, this really stressful and intense environment where patients and families have very little control over their situation. And we were sent in to try to break some of that tension and try to provide some catharsis to inspire and aid in the healing process with laughter and joy and make a connection and really to try to empower the people that were in the hospitals. And this was the first time that I really started to feel like what I had discovered in myself had value to other people and that I can make a positive impact on other people's lives. My most favorite place to visit in the hospital was the oncology department, specifically the isolation units, the children in isolation. These were kids that had no immune system. Their immune system was so suppressed that they couldn't defend themselves from just common germs, like the common cough or sneeze could be lethal to them. So they had to be kept in a room all to themselves, a sterile room, and their only human interaction was with doctors in gowns and masks coming in to check up on them, or with specialists looking at them through this glass wall to observe their vital signs. And, you know, there's that kind of mime cliche about being trapped in a glass box. These kids literally were trapped inside of a glass box with no control over their situation, no contact with the outside world. They were experiencing a level of isolation beyond anything that I had experienced in my teenage years. But there was still something in that I connected with, that I understood from my experience and from my training. And I realized I could use mime as a way to reach through that glass and touch those kids and get them to look the other way, not just feel that they were being looked in upon. And I was like, I got this. I can find a way to connect with them. And I made it my mission to exhaust all the possibilities that you can do behind a glass wall to get their attention, or really it was more like this, to try to whatever it was, just to get their eyes to light up and to get a smile on their face and to know that I saw them and they saw me. And I would try to shoot my energy through that glass to juice them up and empower them and give them just a little bit more motivation to fight a little bit harder and hopefully get out of there a little bit quicker. I would also spend a lot of time in the waiting rooms with family members, parents, and siblings who had maybe been dealt with some really bad news or were just having trouble coping with their situation. And I would just sit with them very often and just hand them tissue after tissue after tissue and simply bear witness to their pain, because I knew from experience that there really wasn't anything I could say to make it better. All I could do was try to make the silence just a little bit more comfortable and bearable. And I knew from the hugs that I would sometimes receive afterwards that I had made a connection and I had been able to use something that I was passionate about and that I was good at to affect somebody else in a positive way. And that's why I tend to view this as a superpower. I know it's kind of an absurd way to look at mime, but I think it's a good way to approach the world from this perspective, that we are all powerful beings and we all have superpowers, whether we're aware of them or not. There's this great cliche quote back to comic books from Spider-Man, from good old Uncle Ben: with great power comes great responsibility. And I really believe that. I think we have an obligation to ourselves and to, firstly to ourselves, to figure out what it is that ignites us, what we're passionate about, what we're good at, to find our superpower. And to be open to the fact that our superpower could be hiding somewhere within our greatest weakness or our biggest fear. And then to take that superpower and cultivate it and grow it and develop it and then enter the world and find ways to apply it, find new and innovative and creative ways to apply it, ways that haven't been thought of before. And we also have an obligation to use our superpower in front of the generation behind us so that we can inspire them to either follow in our footsteps and pursue the same path, or to simply be inspired by our love of something so that they can go out and find something that they love to do, to find something that they're passionate about, to find their superpower. Because I really think if we started to think of ourselves as this collective legion of superheroes, as highly powered beings, the effect that we could have on the world and our surroundings in just a short amount of time is pretty limitless and pretty infinite. So I'd just like to finish by inviting you to think about what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and to think about what your superpower might be. Thank you very much.